So, just as some background, I'm a male and currently 25, still living within 15 miles of my old house. This happened when I was about 8 or 9, making my sister at the time 5 or 6. We lived in a quiet neighborhood that once I grew up, I found out was actually a lower income part of town. However, we had some wonderful neighbors, and it was thanks to these neighbors that a lot of potentially negative situations were avoided. At the time, my dad was working an 8 AM to 8 PM job, and my mother was a secretary at a hospital, which meant that during the day she would often be at work. Usually, my sister and I had a babysitter, but once I reached about 8 or 9, I began to be old enough to look after us without a babysitter. Now, mind you, this was the 90s, which certainly wasn't that safe, but were much safer than they are now. Also, we had the previously mentioned neighbors who generally did a great job of keeping an eye on us and our house. This particular incident was one of the first times I was charged to babysit my sister. She was in her high chair eating whatever my mum had left for us when I got a knock on our front door. Now, this was strange since we never got visitors on a regular basis, other than the boy across the street who would want us to come out and play, but he usually just yelled my name while knocking. I was young and naive and decided to open the door. There was a locked screen door beyond that. I left that closed and locked. Outside was a middle-aged man. I hardly remember his facial features or even body type, but I do remember his yellow shirt and dirty jeans. "Can I help you?" I asked innocently, no alarm bells going off yet.
Hey there, are your parents home?
Alright, first alarm bell. My parents teaching me not to trust strangers rushed through my head, but I still didn't quite fully grasp the potential danger. "My mum went to the store. She'll be back any minute." Weird half lie. I could have said that she was here but in the shower, or that she was laying down upstairs. I'm glad I didn't tell him that she wouldn't be back for quite a few hours, but looking back, it's scary how naive I was.
Well, that's no problem. Hey, so, look, my dog went missing and I think it went into your backyard. Do you mind if I come in and we can go and check it out?
Okay, so, I may have been dumb, but I wasn't that dumb. There was no way in hell that I was letting this stranger into my house, especially with my sister there. She was my first thought. Sure, I didn't want to have any harm fall on me, but she was my first thought, as it was my job to keep her safe. I should have closed the door right then and there, but once again, I went with a less safe, but still not totally stupid route. "Well, the gate should be unlocked. If you want to go check out the backyard, you can." And promptly, I closed the door. Now, of course, I was very curious if there was a stray dog in my backyard. Dogs are great. Even with the weird guy being around, I was pretty interested to see how his search in the backyard went. So I decided to go and check the back window and see if there was actually a dog, and if so, if the man would catch it. Now, at this point, I am sure that you've figured out by this point that there was no dog. And when I looked out the back window, I could see almost the entire yard, including the gate. The man wasn't there. This was mere seconds after I had closed the door on him. I waited for a few minutes, but he never showed up. After about 5 minutes, there was another knock on my door. This time, I was much more wary, and I didn't like this guy showing up. I was pretty tired of the whole ordeal, but I still hadn't fully grasped the situation. I kept the chain lock on the door and cracked it open. "Did you find your dog?" Again, I can't remember his facial features, so I really cannot recall his expression, but I remember his tone was a bit desperate, as well as annoyed.
No, I looked all over the yard and I couldn't find him. I have a picture in my car if you want to take it, just in case you see him.
Nope, no more. I still didn't understand the abduction thing, but I certainly was not going to go anywhere outside of the house with this stranger. I told him that he can leave a picture in the mailbox and we'll keep an eye out, once again promptly closing the door. And what followed is what really creeps me out to this day. Looking back, I was freaked out that I had come that close to exposing my sister and myself to danger, but this scared the shit out of me. Suddenly, there was more knocking on my door, not the screen door separating the door itself. Like I mentioned previously, the screen door was locked, and unless that was open, it was impossible to knock on the door itself. And it freaks me the fuck out, and I took my sister to my bedroom and crept back out to the kitchen, where I could see out into the front yard, and saw the man quickly getting back into his car, while my saint of a next door neighbor, Joanne, stood on her front lawn, smoking and watching him intently. It took a long time for me to add it all up, and honestly, I had forgotten about it for a long time. When I finally remembered it all, I couldn't even believe my own memories. I am still debating with myself to actually tell my parents now. I wouldn't want to unnecessarily upset them. But maybe that's an important story to tell my two younger sisters, one of whom is getting married soon. Just as a life lesson. I forgot to mention, it turns out that he had ripped a corner of the screen door and had unlocked the screen door that way. My dad later just thought it was wear and tear, or us kids being kids. But yeah, I forgot to mention that portion. Pretty creepy looking back on it. So, yellow shirt man, let's not meet again. This happened a few years ago, while I was still in high school. I was 17 at the time. I grew up in a small town, and my mother, sister and I moved to our largest city. I was home alone with my little sister, who was 3, as my mum regularly worked night shifts, and I was a built-in babysitter. It was winter, just before Christmas, so by about 5 PM, it was essentially black outside. This happened at around 9 PM. I would let my sister stay up late with me, and once she fell asleep cuddling with me on the couch, I would move her to her room. It helped me to eliminate temper tantrums about bedtime, so we were laying on the couch when our dog started to lose her mind. Our dog was a big, floppy basset hound named Matilda. She was incredibly sweet and would rarely ever bark, but at this point, she's growling and the fur on her back is standing up. I immediately knew something very wrong was happening, and I picked my sister up and brought her to the washroom, which had no windows. I sat her in the tub and told her not to move, and I locked the door from the inside and shut it. I go back to the living room, my sister safe and sound, and grab my cell phone ready to call for help if I need to, when someone starts banging on my door like crazy. I look through the peephole and I see a man standing outside, his face covered in blood. Matilda is still losing her mind and she's trying to force herself between me and the door. My heart is pounding in my ears and it feels like my stomach is about to fall out of my butt, and I have no idea what to do, so I move away from the door and just stand there silently freaking out. The banging gets louder, and then I start to hear voices and yelling, and this guy is pleading with me to open the door. I go and look in the peephole again, and there is another guy there, beating on the blood-covered guy. At this point I'm a small defenseless 17-year-old girl, and there are 2 seemingly large men outside, one of which is beating the crap out of another guy covered in blood, as he's begging me to let him in my house. I finally call 911. I give them the necessary information while I'm shaking uncontrollably, and they send the police, fire and ambulance. I generally don't think I made any sense during that phone call. I'm surprised they were able to narrow down what my address actually was. And when the scene was finally taken care of, a police officer knocks on my door. We later found out that the blooded guy was jumped a block or 2 away and was beaten pretty badly. He made a run for it and made it to my house, and the dude that was assaulting him caught up with him. At this point my dog is still going ballistic. My toddler sister is locked in the bathroom, crying hysterically, and I feel like I'm about to die from how much adrenaline is pumping through my body. I open the door for them, and part of the front of it is covered in blood from the hurt guy pounding on it, and I just break down. I'm still shaking and shivering from everything, and I start sobbing hysterically. I manage to get my dog to relax enough to let the officers come inside, and they helped me get my sister out of the bathroom, and they called my mum at work to tell her what's happening. They take my statements about the whole ordeal and stay with my sister and I until my mum gets home. Needless to say, that night, my mum, my sister and I all slept in my mum's room. In hindsight, I understand that the guy that was hurt wasn't trying to scare or hurt me or my sister. He was just trying to get help, and I felt terrible that I didn't let him in, despite it being the right thing to do. But still, bloody-faced guy and bad man, let's not meet. This happened nearly 8 years ago, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was walking with my mother around 10 PM, and it was a summer's evening, and we were trying to get some fresh air as it was a scorching hot day, and the house was way too hot. I decided to walk with her down the road around the roadblock to get onto a nice path. This was along a normally busy road, however, it was quiet at the time. I crossed with her to the side of the road where the roadblock was. To the side of some cement barriers ahead was a small forest-like area in front of a large property, not belonging to the owners. Mind you, it was pitch black, and there was only a street light about 100 feet away. We cross over, and I hear a really odd sound. Red flags went off, and I felt my heart sink deep into my chest. "Mom, did you hear that?" She didn't say anything, but I saw the worry and confusion in her eyes. She said, "Turn around, we're going back." What we heard was a deep growl, something short but fierce. It continued a couple of times and we quickly turned around, and I started running, but she couldn't run due to health issues. I turned around for a short sprint and saw, I kid you not, a large black figure on all fours creep up from behind the barrier we were at seconds prior. I started sweating really bad and almost shat myself. "Mum, what the hell was that? Run, please." She started to speed walk, and I watched as the figure got up on 2 legs and jumped into the forest. This thing looked like a man in some sort of a gorilla suit. We booked it home and decided to just open the windows for fresh air that night. We never came across anything like that in our area again. But deeper into the mountain area of the city, there was an 8-man reportedly masturbating and exposing himself to women who would run on the trail. Gorilla man, let's not meet. I grew up in Wolverhampton, in the West Midlands, UK. I was 12 years old, and let's just say I didn't have the easiest of upbringings. I was smoking, drinking, and staying out late around this time of my life. So, I was bunking off school, intentionally missing classes, and my mum was at work, and it was late morning time around 11 AM. I wanted to buy some cigarettes, but I was well under the legal age of 16, and I had to hang around outside the shop and ask strangers if they would take my money and purchase them for me. About 1.5 miles from my house there was a little shop called the Spa. It was on a fairly busy road. A row of hedges lined one side, with a gap that led into the field beyond, and houses on the opposite side. So I was standing maybe 10 paces from the shop, waiting for people to walk past so I could ask them to purchase my cigarettes. I usually second-guessed if they would be willing by how they looked. I asked a lady, maybe mid-40s, shoulder-length blonde hair, black business trousers, pink elbow-length jumper. Looks like she smoked, but she said no. I asked a guy, maybe mid-50s, shaved brown hair. He was wearing blue jeans and a white shirt. He ignored me. So I was getting desperate by this point and decided upon asking anybody that came by. Then I see a rather disheveled looking man coming up the road towards me past the row of hedges. He was wearing dirty dark brown trousers and a buttoned up dark brown dirty velvet jacket. He had a black bowler kind of hat on, and he kind of limped a little as he walked. As he got closer to me, I was trying to suss out if he looked like the type that would possibly purchase a 12-year-old cigarette, and I noticed that he was probably homeless and probably in his late 50s to early 60s. But I thought, hey, he probably smokes, I'll ask him. As he approached me, I gave him the usual line. "Excuse me, mate. Would you please go into that shop and get some fags for me?" He stopped and thought for a second, then said,
How old are you?
I lied. "I'm 15, almost 16. Then he said,
Alright, which ones do you want?
and held out a really dirty hand. I gave him my money and asked him to get me 10 sovereign. I had the exact change. He goes into the shop and I'm waiting outside excited. I'm finally getting my cigarettes and can go home and chill out before I have to leave the house again to make it look like I've just come home from school. He comes out and gives me 20 sovereign. I'm miffed, to say the least, and say, "But I only gave you enough money for 10. And I start panicking because I don't have any extra money on me to give him. At this point, he hooks my arm in his, very tightly holding my arm very firmly to his side, and starts to walk back towards the hedge-lined road. He leads me through the gap in the hedges and into the field, all the while talking non-stop, still briskly walking with my arm locked in his. He's telling me how I can come to his house and help fix the roof tiles. I'm still in silent shock. The field is huge and I can see that it leads into more fields and more fields. I can hear the cars behind me getting more distant. I can't see any houses for miles. There's just fields. He's still talking, but I'm not taking in what he's actually saying. My mind starts to race. I finally realize that something about this isn't quite right and I have to get away. As he is still walking, still holding my arm, I suddenly and violently pull back with my arm straight, and it slides my arm out of his very quickly, and he goes flying towards and lands in a heap he goes flying forwards and lands in a heap on the floor, and I take one big step backwards. I'm terrified at this point, but still in shock, and I can't speak. He's laying on the ground, groaning, holding his leg, like he's in a lot of pain.
Why do you do that? You really hurt me. Help me up. Help me up.
He's holding his leg and holding his hand out for me to help him out. I'm frozen. My mind is racing so fast, and I'm looking at this disheveled man right in the eye, laying on the ground, groaning like he's in pain. But something about this situation didn't sit right with me, and my gut was telling me to run. Don't help him up. "I brought you those cigarettes, didn't I? I helped you out. Why did you do this? You've hurt me. Help me up." I take another step backwards, all the while looking into his green eyes. All of a sudden, he stops groaning and asking for me to help him up. He points his finger at me, looking me right in the eyes, and said, "You're a smart girl." It was like an electric shock ran through my body, and I turn and run. I don't look back, I just run as fast as I can. When I've gone off the hedge-lined road and turned into the next road, I slow as I'm out of breath. I start bawling my eyes out and I'm shaking uncontrollably. I keep checking behind me, catch my breath, and don't stop running until I get home. Needless to say, I was terrified that I'd bump into that man again, and I never tried to buy cigarettes from that shop ever again.